A number of K-pop acts have been making headlines at this year's Coachella in the US for their phenomenal performance, according to critics. So what is the significance of LESSERAFIM's show at Coachella 2024? What has been the response to K-pop's first boy band performance at Coachella? And what are the prospects for the K-pop industry this year? Welcome to Thursday's edition of Issues and Insiders. I'm Min Sunhee. Today we touch upon the latest events in the world of K-pop here and elsewhere. For this, I have entertainment reporter Tamar Herman live on the line. Tamar, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me.
I also have Doctor Jeong A-reum at Arizona State University live on the line as well. Dr. Jeong, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Right, Tamar, we'll start off then with Coachella 2024 being in full swing there in the US. Now, I hear LESSERAFIM made a big splash there this past weekend. Let's start off with this group's performance and perhaps its significance, the growing presence of K-pop on the international stage.
Yeah, this was LESSERAFIM's first performance at Coachella. It was the first time that they have been on a big international music festival stage, and it's only within 2 years of their debut. So it's very telling about how popular they are, how many hits they have. You know, everybody knows their songs. They have really trendy sounds. So they're a perfect fit for a festival like Coachella. It also shows just how popular Korean music and Asian music in general is becoming at these sort of music festivals. At Coachella this year, not only was there LESSERAFIM and the boy band ATEEZ, but also the soloist BB and the band The Rose were there representing Korea, and there were a lot of other Asian popular acts there from various countries. So it's definitely showing a shift going on in especially the American music festival, looking for a little bit of more global audience. And so, of course, you know, they were the hot girls at the festival this year, and they'll be back again next week.
Right. Tamar, you mentioned ATEEZ. Now, ATEEZ, the group itself, this K-pop boy band, it made history at this year's Coachella as being the first K-pop boy band to be invited on stage there. The local headlines claim the band itself surpassed expectations and put on a phenomenal show. What more can you tell us?
ATEEZ are known for their amazing performances. They lean into a lot of theatrical concepts a lot, so this isn't such a big surprise, but I think because it is the first boy band, people don't really love boy bands in the US. I think a lot of people were very surprised. There was also some very not good camera work that for the live stream wasn't great, and people still they were able to see the vision of what ATEEZ were doing regardless of the not great camera work. So I think that people were very excited to see just what they had to offer, and they clearly put a lot of effort into it, and it definitely paid off.
Right, good to know. And speaking as a scholar, Dr. Jeong, what are your thoughts on efforts by ATEEZ to incorporate traditional Korean elements into its performance at Coachella this year?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I really enjoyed ATEEZ's performance at Coachella. I was actually sorry I couldn't see it live at the festival. I watched a lot of fan cams on YouTube, and I noticed that they had the projection of the Hawetta mask in one of their performances. Nowadays, many K-pop artists incorporate traditional Korean elements into their music videos, costumes, or stage performances. So ATEEZ is not alone in that sense. Previously, we've seen acts such as BTS, Blackpink, NCT 127, and Stray Kids incorporate traditional elements into their music videos. And there's actually quite a long tradition of doing so if we go all the way back to, for example, 쏟아지는 boys who incorporated Korean traditional instruments into their music, or a big band who also incorporated hanbok and 사자춤 into their music videos. So in that sense, we could say that these artists are performing Koreanness on the global stage. And I think it's less about that particular object or element. It's really more about revealing a sense of national identity, national pride. And in doing so, it could also motivate international fans to look up and study Korean culture and tradition. So in a sense, these artists are also promoting Korean traditions as well.
Right. Dr. Jeong, the popularity of K-pop groups from smaller record labels, its renewed interest in the challenges faced by these groups as compared to their counterparts from the Big Four, namely being, of course, SM Entertainment, JYP, YG, and HYBE. How tough would you say is it for a team from a small record label to succeed in the market?
I would say it could be seen as challenging for for a group from a smaller agency to succeed, but it's not entirely impossible because we have seen many, many examples of groups from smaller companies gain visibility and attention from the public and become successful. I mean, ATEEZ is also a good example because their company KQ is seen as relatively smaller than the big four. But nowadays, there are many, many ways to gain visibility from the public and also to strengthen your fan base through digital media and technology. For example, stars can communicate much more frequently with their fans through digital media and tech. And there's also all these TikTok challenges, short videos that they can engage with to become viral to the public. So although there may be challenges, I don't think it's impossible for groups from smaller companies to become successful.
Right. Tamar, meanwhile, the K-pop market, it's witnessing an unprecedented influx of fresh talent with at least 3 idol groups debuting each month since the start of this year. How do you explain this trend?
It's a pretty common trend, actually. We've had probably since 2015 at least 50 K-pop groups debuting every year. It might have even been before that. Nowadays, it's not unheard of that we'll probably get close to 100 debuts in any given year. Usually it's like somewhere between the 70s and the 80s. Right now, I think there's definitely a big push, especially this year, because we're in the middle of a transition between one generation of K-pop acts to another. We're transitioning from the 4th generation of K-pop to the 5th generation. So a lot of companies, a lot of investors want to kind of get their foot in the door first to be like the leaders of the 5th generation. And there's also just the natural turn of like the wheel of trainees and artists. So like a company, maybe they debuted a group 4 to 5 years ago, and now it's their time again for them to launch a new one. So it's a pretty natural shift. And I think that trend is definitely going to continue throughout this year.
Right. And given the popularity of that trend then, Tamar, this is an impromptu question for you. What would you say, based on the developments we've seen in the K-pop industry thus far, what would you say is the appeal of K-pop for its foreign fan base?
Just generally, I think a lot of people like the high energy of it and the quality, and also it's just very entertaining. K-pop stars are very invested in their engagement with their fans, and you also know, like, if your favorite group is coming out with a new album, it'll be an album that is a high quality album. Obviously there's a lot of content in the internet nowadays, and people know that K-pop, the idea of an act coming out of the K-pop industry, it's something to be excited about. It's something to have high expectations out of. And of course, there's a big communal aspect to it all. And of course, there's the relationship between the idols and the fans. There's just so much going on. But I think it always comes down to K-pop is very good, and people at the end of the day are very engaged with it because of that.
Right. Meanwhile, Dr. Jeong, starting, I believe, last year, a number of industry insiders here in the country, they've raised quite a bit of concern about signs of a slowdown in K-pop. Do you share these concerns?
I think it seems like there is a global slowdown compared to the early days of the pandemic. And during the pandemic, there was an explosion of newcomers, new fans learning about K-pop, engaging with K-pop. And so I think compared to the past, 3-4 years, it seems like there is a global slowdown, but I don't really think there's something to be deeply concerned about. One of the factors that it might look like a slowdown is because of the fans' restrictions and finances, because after the pandemic the quarantine restrictions were lifted, so many K-pop groups toured outside of Korea, in North America, in Europe. And so these fans have no choice but to choose which concert to go to and which not to because of financial restrictions. So it might seem like there is a global slowdown compared to the past 3-4 years, but I don't really think there is something deeply concerning about the current state of the K-pop industry.
Right then, what about you, Tamara? What are your thoughts as a reporter covering K-pop? What are your thoughts regarding its prospects moving forward?
Yeah, I think I think that the professor discussed the COVID effect, and I think that a lot of people got very comfortable with the spending power of fans when everybody was kind of in lockdowns or stuck at home, or there wasn't as much touring or other things in life that people were spending their money on. So during the pandemic, there was a big surge of spending, and now I think that a lot of the fears that we're hearing about are actually not necessarily because there's a slowdown, but because people are concerned that the growth will slow down. So there's still growth, and year over year numbers of like streaming and album sales and just in general are still growing, but it's a slower growth than it was in previous years. So I think that's where a lot of the concern is coming from, rather than necessarily like things are coming to a halt and fans aren't as interested anymore. If anything, I think there is still major fan interest and a lot of money being spent. It's more generally like trying to figure out a path forward now that that sort of boom that was coming out of the pandemic has kind of faltered off a little bit.
Right, and staying with efforts to kind of expand the K-pop industry itself, Tamar, there have been efforts to set up a group of K-pop idols in the US as well, finding talent there and starting off from the US market. What are your thoughts regarding such efforts?
I think we're seeing a lot of different attempts by companies to try to diversify beyond just what K-pop is known as right now, and trying to make it something that can definitely go beyond just a moment that people think maybe the bubble will pop. So we're seeing several companies, including like JYP and HYBE, launch their own American or global girl groups. We're also seeing some companies team up with other regional mainstays. So like SM Entertainment is reported to launch a UK boy band, and the UK is actually known for their boy band. So it's going to be exciting to see what happens there. We're also seeing a lot more lean into, going back to Coachella, leaning into international music festivals where K-pop usually didn't go to until the past few years, excuse me. And we're also seeing a lot more cross-genre collaborations, so especially like with Latin musicians who are very popular nowadays, and just generally a lot of chart toppers and K-pop stars are now collaborating. We're also seeing, which is a kind of fun diversification, is a lot of television and movie placements are now featuring K-pop artists to create original soundtracks. So there's a lot of different diversification across a lot of different fields, and I think it's going to continue, but it's going to be interesting to see which of these mediums actually plays out in a positive way.
Right, indeed. And Dr. Jeong, this is also an impromptu question, but speaking within your capacity as a scholar in the field of Korean culture, what are your thoughts with regard to more efforts perhaps to blend K-pop with other sectors, not just tourism, like education, for example, to perhaps get a greater global interest in Korea as a country itself?
I definitely think there's so much interest in not just in K-pop, but also in other areas of Hallyu, such as Korean film, K-drama, because I'm seeing more and more students asking to enroll in classes in Korean literature, Korean film, Korean pop culture, and they're not just K-pop fans. They're also fans who are interested in Korean film, TV dramas. Also, Korean food is gaining a lot of interest, traction here in Arizona, and so I do think the global expansion of Hallyu will continue for the next couple of years at least.
Right. Dr. Jeong, there are some people who claim that compared to the growing interest in Hallyu and in Korean culture overseas, there is not a lot of resources responding or better addressing or catering to these demands. What are your thoughts, keeping in mind Arizona?
Well, compared to like 10 years ago when I actually first came to the US to enroll in graduate studies, I would say so much has changed. Even at Arizona State University, there are several different classes in Korean language, Korean film, Korean history, Korean pop culture, and there's also a section of neighborhood of Korean restaurants that's very popular nowadays. I have students who come ask me about Korean actors and actresses, and also about politics. For example, they would ask me questions about the elections that just happened recently in Korea, and so I do think compared to the past 5 years, there are actually a lot more resources, especially through digital media and technology. And more younger people are engaging with these resources, not just within educational institutions, but also by themselves through social media to learn more and to engage more with Korean culture.
Right, that is good to know then. Dr. Jeong, meanwhile, going back to my earlier question to you about the concern that industry insiders here had about the slowdown in K-pop, Goldman Sachs, for its part, actually claims that K-pop's fan base will expand at a compound annual rate of 26%, and I quote, over the next 3 years, with decisive growth potential in neighboring Japan. How do you respond?
I do think there is a high possibility that K-pop's fan base will increase because the industry nowadays is releasing new content, new resources, new fan events, new merchandise daily to engage with the fans' interest. And if you are a K-pop fan, you will find these very attractive, very addictive. And I think the industry facilitates collective experiences for fans, but then the power could also shift from the industry to the fandom because fandom's enthusiasm, their fervor, their economic power could also motivate the industry to create more cutting-edge resources. So I'm actually very optimistic that K-pop's fan base will grow larger in the next couple of years.
Right, and speaking about K-pop fans, Tamar, there's been quite a bit of coverage about how K-pop fans are using their base for social good, like to initiate or to promote green campaigns. Is this a phenomenon that we're also witnessing in the US as well?
I think it's definitely a behavior that K-pop fans have around the world have taken upon themselves. You'll see people taking, especially environmental campaigns are quite big, and also political campaigns are very, very big. You'll get small, localized ones, like leaning into trying to get local regions to maybe show out and vote more, or talk about boycotts if there's a political thing that a lot of fans say that they don't want to support. It's definitely a rallying point for many fans to take on these sizable campaigns. Sometimes the results are more visible than others. And it's definitely become something that K-pop fans are known for. I don't necessarily know how much of it is grassroots. It's more grassroots than formal coordination. There's not necessarily like K-pop fan NGOs organizing all this, but that's kind of some of the beauty of it.
Right. Tamar, earlier we spoke about how there is quite a bit of new initiatives, that is, to further expand the K-pop industry. And staying with that, what more do you suppose can entertainment agencies here in Korea do to ensure continued global market growth for K-pop?
I think going back to the Goldman suggestion that the market, especially in Japan, will grow a lot is something that we're seeing right now is a lot of K-pop companies who have traditionally not necessarily debuted Japanese members are now leaning really into them. So HYBE now just launched their new girl group very successfully, ILIT, and they have several Japanese members. And then you also have SM Entertainment and CT Wish, which has also a few Japanese members. So you're seeing these hybrid groups that are definitely fully K-pop focused, promoting in Korea, but they're also able to hop between them. And JYP actually did this really well, obviously with the group as popular as TWICE, they have a lot of Japanese members and they very clearly dominated the Japanese market for a long time. So now a lot of people are kind of taking from that lesson and really leaning into it. So I think that's definitely one big market. And I think we're going to see kind of some more of that sort of cross-culture, not as much collaboration as much as leaning into different regions that companies want to move into and that artists want to move into in this way.
Right, indeed. And talking about companies, Dr. Jeong, HYBE, it's set to become the first entertainment agency here in Korea to join the League of Conglomerates this year. What are the broader implications, do you suppose, of this advancement?
Well, we could envision K-pop expanding even more than what we're seeing right now because I would expect HYBE to acquire more international labels or also to launch more branches in other cities. There are already several labels and also very popular K-pop groups under HYBE, and so I would expect that to grow bigger. At the same time, there is the risk of HYBE monopolizing the K-pop industry, and also smaller companies usually follow examples or guidelines of bigger companies, and so I'm hoping that HYBE will set good examples as one of the key leaders of the industry.
Right, I see. All right then. Dr. Jeong, thank you so much for your insights today. And Tamar, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you so much.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. Be sure to join us again same time tomorrow.